Hi, let's start the second lesson from the 8th standard, that is geographical features and the prehistoric India. So that in this chapter we are going to discuss about the physical features of India, and India is as a both subcontinent as well as peninsula. Next one, in this chapter we are going to discuss about the how many neighboring countries are there in India, with how many countries we are having the water border and land border. So these are the important aspects we are going to discuss. Next one, the living style of the man in the prehistoric age, how the man was living. So that we are going to discuss. Next, lastly, the Stone Age, how the Stone Age has been divided into 4 parts and how many again they have been divided. So that so many things we are going to have the discussion in this chapter. Without wasting the time, let us begin the lesson. So that in this chapter, first of all, let us understand India is a peninsula and subcontinent. The first of all, India is called both. So India is called a subcontinent as well as a peninsula. The first of all, we should understand the definition or meaning of the subcontinent and the peninsula. It is already written here. What is meant by the peninsula? It is a land area which has been covered by water on 3 sides, and one side, if at all it is covered by the land, then that will be called as a peninsula. Now come to the point, that is how India is called as a subcontinent. India is called subcontinent because whatever the physical features we can identify in order to make on landmass as a continent, all physical features are available only in a country that is called India. So because of this reason we used to call India as a subcontinent. Now let us understand, so that with how many countries that India is having the land border and water border. First of all, India is having the land border with the Bangladesh, first one, China, Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bhutan and Afghanistan. The first of all, with which country India is sharing the largest land border? First of all, that is Bangladesh, with second one China. Next, India is consisting for about 28 states and 8 UTs and one national capital city, that is New Delhi, about which already you know. Next one, so that India can be divided into 4 parts physically, means physical features of India. In this chapter, India comprises, or India physically has been divided into 4 parts. First of all, Himalayan mountain, means northern mountain also you can say, Indo-Gangetic plain or northern Great Plain. So remember there are various names are there. So in the case of next one, third, Deccan Plateau, fourth one is coastal region in South India. So finally we can say the India has been divided into 4 parts, first, second and third, fourth. Here we can understand very clearly with the help of map of India. So this is the Himalayan mountain which has been located in the most northern part of India. Next, second one is northern Great Plain or Indo-Gangetic plain. This can be called as Indo-Gangetic plain or northern Great Plain. And this is Deccan Plateau and desert, Indian desert. Obviously earlier in the earlier video, I mean earlier picture, it was not shown, but in different books it has been given. Next, come to the point, the Western Ghat and Eastern Ghat. So this is the place which has been colored with the green. This is called as a Western Ghat, and this coastal area is also one of the important physical feature of India. This is a physical, this is the coastal area of India. So it starts from Gujarat and it will come to an end till the West Bengal. So this is called as a coastal area of India. Now let us understand, first of all, Himalayan mountain, how the Himalayan mountains are important from various point of view, especially from the security point of view and from economic point of view. Let us understand how this is important. Here in this picture we can understand very easily, already it is written here, just let me read it out. So Himalayan mountain, they are very much helpful, they are fruitful, they help us to preserve the safety and security of India. So that how the Himalayan mountains are very important from the security point of view. Obviously since centuries no country could attack India from this route, so that no single country was capable to make an attack, invade on India from this route, because here the Himalayan mountain is playing role like a big wall. Because of that reason India is secured, especially from the security point of view. Obviously there were so many battles, thousands of the attack had taken place on India, not from this route but actually from this route. Obviously this is called northwestern route of India. This is the northwestern part of India. From this route obviously thousands of battle or thousands of attack have taken place. Especially we can say the Bola and Khyber passes, these are the 2 passes through which that attack always used to take place on India. This is that we have to understand. Next one, how the Himalayan mountains are very important from the economic point of view. Why? Because the most of the rivers which are flowing in the northern part of India, especially Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, and there are so many rivers, we can say Kali river, and so many rivers are there. Obviously Kali river, obviously we can say in Karnataka also, and there is one more Kali river here we can see. So this is the Kali river here in between the border of India and Nepal. There is a small river, that is Kali river, and this Kali river, and these are the important rivers. They are originating, they are taking their birth in Himalayan mountain only. Because of that reason, these rivers which are taking place or which are taking their birth from Himalayan mountain, they flow throughout the year. Because of that reason, we can say the people who are living nearby this Indus, this northern Great Plain, they receive the water for whole year. Next one, Indo-Gangetic Plain. How the Indo-Gangetic Plain is important for India? So this is the Indo-Gangetic Plain where I am making the highlight. No, so this is called Indo-Gangetic Plain, and it is very much fertile and rich. It is given here. Indo-Gangetic plains are very extremely fertile. Because of this one, even Indus Valley civilization, even Vedic period, these they flourished here only. Means they developed, and moreover, the thousands of the battle have taken place here to control this area. Why? Because this is very much rich and fertile and very much plain, we can say. Because of this reason, the thousands of the battle have taken place. If you go through the history of India, you will come to know because of only one area, that is to control this Indo-Gangetic Plain. We can say today also the more than 50% of the total population of India, they are residing in this Indo-Gangetic Plain, because obviously the water is available for whole year, and the land is very much plain, and the soil is very much fertile and rich, we can say, and industries are set up because water is very easily accessible, and the roads and railway lines can be constructed very easily because there is no variation in the land height. Next one here, so that Narmada river, it separates India into two, central highland and Deccan plateau. In this chapter, or here we can understand, so that how the Narmada river, so this is the place, this is the Narmada river where I am moving my cursor. So this is the Narmada river, and they are saying Narmada rivers, they have, or that has divided India into two equal halves, that is northern part of India and this is southern part of India. And along with this Narmada river, obviously here one more river is there located, that is Tapti river. So Narmada river and Tapti, these are the two rivers which are flowing on the side of the western part of India, or western flowing rivers, we can say. Obviously the most of the rivers which we can get to see in India, they are flowing toward the eastern part of India, but these here exceptions are given. So these are the two rivers, Narmada and Tapti. So these are the two rivers which flow toward the western part of India. And another important aspect that we should highlight here, there are many more hills or mountains, we can say. Obviously this northern mountain, that is Himalayan mountain, that is different, the highest mountain in the world, we can say. This Aravali hill, Vindhya mountain and Satpura hill, so these are the important mountain we can identify. And one more thing we should understand here, this India can be divided into two parts, and this has been divided by the Narmada river. Not only this one Narmada river, even Vindhya mountain also divides India into two equal halves. The dynasty which were ruling India, especially in northern part of India, so they were trying to attack the southern part of India, but they were unable to attack, they were unable to capture the southern part of India, because they had to face this natural barrier. They had to cover, or they had to go through, or they had to they had to pass this Vindhya mountain, then the Narmada river, then Satpura hills, next one another, that is Tapti river. Because of that reason, they had to face the natural barriers, because then they couldn't attack, they couldn't occupy the southern part of India. Now let us understand what are the important dynasties which ruled this northern part of India. So here we can understand very easily. The northern part of India, it was ruled by Mauryas, Guptas, Shatavahanas, and so many other rulers. They ruled northern part of India. Next, if you come to the southern part of India, the dynasty which ruled and which were very famous in the southern part of India, they have given the Pandyas, Cheras, Cholas, Kadambas. Remember here Kadamba, it is the first Karnataka dynasty. Because of that reason I am highlighting. So Kadamba is the first Kannada dynasty, we can say, or Karnataka dynasty. Next one, sorry, Rashtrakutas and Bahmani Sultan. Bahmani Sultan. So why these are highlighted with the red color? Because the Rashtrakutas and Bahmani Sultan, these are the two dynasty which started their dynasty, which were founded in Kalburgi district. Obviously, when this southern part of India was being ruled by different dynasty, at that time the Rashtrakutas were very famous and very mighty dynasty. And this Rashtrakuta dynasty, they started in our Kalburgi district. Next, another dynasty which founded in Kalburgi district, that is Bahmani Sultan. And remember Sat Gumas and Kalburgi Fort and whatever the monuments we can see nearby the Kalburgi city and Kalburgi district, and then those are these were made by Rashtrakutas as well as Bahmani Sultans. Next one, next here it is, they have given a Deccan Plateau. So the Deccan Plateau, this is one of the physical feature, one of the physical division of India. Here whatever it has been highlighted, this is Deccan Plateau, where the many number of the states they are lying, or they are part of the Deccan Plateau, and the Deccan Plateau is the biggest physical division of India. Next, come to the point, the coastal area of India. Obviously the coastal area start from Gujarat here, where the I am moving the cursor, it start from here and it will go on like this, and it will cover the Western Ghat and Eastern Ghat. It will go parallel to the Western Ghat and Eastern Ghat, and it will come to an end nearby the West Bengal. And the total length of the coastal area of India, or obviously already I had made it clear, India is having the two borders, that is water border and land border. Here is the land border in this side, so that this is the land border. So northern part of India we can say, and the southern part of India, here the coastal area we can say. So the total length of the coastal area is, it is already written, that is 6,100 kilometer. It start from Gujarat here and come to an end in West Bengal. Now as far as this land border of India is concerned, the land border of India is 15,200 kilometer. It start from here and it will go on like this, that completely we can say the land border is much longer than that of the coastal area or coastal line we are having. But here the coastal line, again it can be divided into two parts, that is a western coastal line, this is western coastal line, and this side it is eastern coastal line. And again the western coastal line is divided into two parts, that is first of all Konkan coastal line, next one Malabar coastal line. Obviously the Karnataka coastal line, Karnataka is also having the coastal line, and Karnataka coastal line can be called as a Malabar coastal line, or Konkan also you can say. And in the case of the western coastal line, the western coastal line is called as a Coromandel coastal line. This is now physical feature of India. Let me show you in a video so that you can understand it very clearly. Here is the video. So this is the globe, this is the only the planet in the solar system where the life existed. Because of that reason it is called as a living planet or unique planet, blue planet. There are so many names given to this our Earth planet. Next one, this is the India. Obviously this is India located in the Asian continent, especially the South Asian continent. Now let us understand location. Our India start from Jammu Kashmir in the most northern part of India till the Kanyakumari in the southern part of India. Here Arunachal Pradesh in the eastern part of India. In the western part of India it extends till the Gujarat. This is a brief introduction. Next one, the Karnataka, India start the from which place to which place. They are showing latitude, longitude of India, from where it extends from which point to which point. This has been explained very clearly. You can see here it starts from 68 to 97 latitude and longitude. So these are the important things that we can say. Here the Bay of Bengal is there, here Arabian Sea, and here downside Indian Ocean we can see. So these are the important aspect that we should understand. Next one, here the mountain, that is Himalayan mountain, and from north to south what is the total length? That is 3,214 kilometer. From here in this direction 2,933 kilometer. This is the length and width of India. And this coastal, Tropic of Cancer, it divides India into two equal halves, obviously northern part of India and southern part of India. This is that we need to understand. Next one, the southern part of India, here they have given highlighted, and this is the northern part of India. And if we compare this area, the southern part of India is little hot, we can say. Now let us understand the physical features of India. This is Himalayan mountain, which is located in most northern part of India, and the size of India is 3.29 million square kilometer. So Himalayan mountain, so the northern Great Plain, a desert region of India. This is a Deccan region, the coastal area. So completely India can be divided into 4 or 5 points, division as far as the physical features of India is concerned. Next one, how the Himalayan mountains are important. So this is the Himalayan mountain. If you look at the India from the space, then it looks like this. Himalayan mountains can be seen very easily. See here, the rain bearing clouds are obviously these are trapped rain bearing clouds or southwestern monsoon winds. They are trapped by the Himalayan mountain, because if there was no Himalayan mountain present in this place, then these rain bearing clouds or northwest southwest monsoon winds, they would have moved away from India, but they are trapped within India because of the presence of Himalayan mountain. Here is the picture we can see very easily, and the Central Asian winds, which are very much cold in the nature. I will show you one more time. So Central Asian winds, which are coming from this direction to this area, if there was no presence of the Himalayan mountain, these would have hit to the mainland of India, which caused severe illness to the people living here. But they are trapped, or they are not let to enter into India because of the presence of Himalayan mountain. So this is the how the greatness that the Himalayan mountains are playing for the India. It's playing role like a big wall which is protecting India from the natural calamities, even the attack from the foreigners. And India is covered by the land, I mean water on the three side, and one side land already so that in the western side of India it is covered by the Arabian Sea, and in the eastern side of India it has been covered by the Bay of Bengal. In the southern part of India it has been covered by the Indian Ocean. So this is they have given, so that Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean. Obviously this is the coastal area of India, start from Gujarat and it will go on like this, and it will come to an end in this place of India, that is West Bengal. And here Andaman Nicobar, these are the part of India, remember. And if you come to this western part of India, Lakshadweep are also located, these are the part of India. Since ancient time India was having trade relation with the foreign. Today also we used to import the oil from Arab countries from this route only, that is a sea route we can say. So that the ships are they move to India, and obviously that will be spreaded to other part of India. So this is the route through which that Indian ships they used to move, and they are supplied, even the some of the goods which are access to India, they are supplied to other countries. Now let us understand, so what are the important neighboring countries that we are having, or we are sharing the land border with them, that is Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan, and this is China, Bangladesh, Myanmar, obviously last one, that is Sri Lanka. So these are the countries with which that India is sharing the land border. Now first of all we should understand, obviously India is located in the most southern part of Asian continent, or South Asian region we can say. In this South Asian region, India is the biggest country, especially in terms of economy, in terms of size, even in terms of military also. India is playing a role like a big brother in South Asian region. This is that we should always remember. Now let us understand another important aspect here of the same lesson, that is the prehistoric age, prehistoric India we can say. In this topic we are going to, and first of all we should understand what is the definition or meaning of the prehistoric period. Obviously history of India can be divided into two parts. One is historical period, and another one is prehistorical period or era. Now let us understand what is meant by this prehistoric period. Prehistoric period, it is a before period or age or era before the discovery of the art of writing, that is called prehistoric period or age. Why we call it as a prehistoric age? Because at that time we do not find any evidence of linguistic development and script. Means at that time there was no language development, even there was no script. Because of that reason it is called as a prehistoric era. If you want to understand about the prehistoric era, there is no writing on this era. Only that the things which are available made by used by the man, those you have to study to understand that history, because there is no development of the language. Linguistic means language, script means like writing. And the people scholar who studied this prehistoric age scholar, they are called archaeologist. Remember here archaeologist spelling that everybody should remember. And these archaeologists, they study about the stones, wood, and the bones which were used by the man at that time. Now let us move on. Where did this man was living? In which place that he was living? The relics of the hunting and food gatherings have been available. They have been found in Bimbekta, Ansigi, and Kurnal. These are the places where earlier man was living. Means the man who was living in the prehistoric age, that man was living nearby this area. Why? Because the relics of man hunting the and food gathering, those are found in these three places. And man used to live nearby the water and nearby the lake, and one more place where he used to live, obviously the where the stones were available. Why? Because obviously the water is very much essential for living. Not only that one, even stones were also very much valuable for the man who was living in the prehistoric age, because stones were like a weapon for him, so that he could kill the animals and he could remove the skin of the animals, and with the help of which he used to make the clothes for himself. Because of that reason, he used to live nearby the river, nearby the water, and nearby the stone. And remember, the place where the stones were available, those were considered like a industrial site. Now, how the man, whether man was aware about the use of fire? Yeah, obviously the man who was living in the prehistoric age, he was quite well aware about the fire. Man in the stone age, he knew about the fire, and the signs of the ashes have been obtained in the caves of the Kurnul. That Kurnul comes obviously in Andhra Pradesh, present Andhra Pradesh. Probably the fire was used for various or multiple purposes. First of all, to cooking the food, and for lightening, and to frighten the animals. Obviously, we know that the man in the prehistoric age, he was living in the forest, and animals, there were many wild animals were present, and they used to attack on the man. To frighten them, he was using the fire. And the drawings are found in the cave. Even today, we can see drawings of the animals hunting in many places, especially in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, even in our state Karnataka, we can see drawings. Let us understand Stone Age. The Stone Age, if you want to understand when or in which era this stone was present, you have to go back 2 millions years ago. If you go back 2 millions years ago, you can say at that time it was a Stone Age, and the Stone Age lasted for about 12,000 years. 12,000 years. And the Stone Age can be divided into three parts. First of all, Old Stone Age, Middle Stone Age, finally New Stone Age. Again, this Old Stone Age has been divided into further three parts: Early Stone Age, Early Old Stone Age, Middle Old Stone Age, and later Old Stone Age. So this is the information regarding the Stone Age. Now I will show you a video how the man was living in the prehistoric age. So what kind of the material that he was using and all, I will show you in the video. So this is the video. Let me show you. This is the man, how the people were living. They were living in the caves, and they were living in the forest. There was no systematic life, and this is called as a prehistoric era. And they were using the stone, they were sharpening them, and even they were aware about the fire, and they used to hunt the animals, and this is the weapon. And they used to make the wheel, and means Neolithic age. When metal age means they were using the metal for, so that the metal could be used for the agriculture. And this is the picture how the man developed himself from one age to another age. And this is the place where the systematic life started to be led by man. And man was using the fire to lighten, next one to frighten the animals, and to kill the animals, finally to cook the food also the fire was used. This is the picture is showing how the animals are being hunted. Man was living like nomadic age. Let me show you and some.
They lived in tribes, in small groups formed by families, and they found refuge in caves where they would paint on the wall. These paintings were done with a mixture of charcoal, earth, animal fat, and water. Look, here are a few examples. The truth is, it's absolutely fascinating to think that these first paintings, these first artistic representations, were drawn thousands of years ago, don't you think? Both Paleolithic men and women wore animal skins, which they had hunted previously. And they used tools such as an axe and spears made out of stones, wood and bones, which they themselves carved. With the passing of time, or rather centuries, these first human beings became more and more intelligent, and they began to domesticate animals such as dogs, goats, sheep and pigs. They also began to cultivate plants, which were then eaten. With the arrival of agriculture and farming, everything changed. Man stopped being a nomad and became sedentary, and the first villages were made. This is when the Paleolithic period ends and the Neolithic begins. The Neolithic started 8 million years before Christ, when we discovered agriculture and farming, and it finished 5,000 years BC with the beginning of the Metal Ages. Men and women in the Neolithic produced food by cultivating the land and domesticating animals. We can say that they were the first farmers and agriculturalists of our history. Better yet, our prehistory. As they had to look after their crops and animals, they constructed small villages and began to settle in them permanently, meaning that they transformed into sedentary, not like the Paleolithic, who were nomads because they were moving constantly. The first Neolithic settlements were situated in very fertile lands, near rivers so they could access water easily, needed for their crops as well as allowing their animals to drink. You know how important water is in our life. The first plants that were cultivated were cereals such as wheat or pulses like chickpeas. But do you know which were the first animals to be domesticated? Well, it was dogs, sheep.
See what they are saying. The first crops which were grown here, they have shown even the many more animals were also domesticated. So first animal they are saying, so which was the first animal which was, and that was nurtured. So these are the important aspects that they are saying. Let us play the further video.
Goats and pigs. During the Neolithic era, many interesting things were invented, such as ceramic and fabric, but the most important invention was the wheel. Everything became so easy for men and women in the Neolithic, especially when they started using metals. This is the point where the Neolithic ended and a new era in prehistory commenced, the Metal Ages, which commenced approximately 6,500 years BC and finished when the first written language was born. The first metal which was used was copper.
So they are saying the first metal which was used by the man on the earth, that is a copper. Second one is bronze, and finally we can
Then bronze,
at end we can say that is a metal. I mean iron.
which is a mixture of copper and tin. And finally, iron, which is a much more abundant mineral and therefore easier to find in nature, which few knew how to do. The rise of Bulgarian production and their appearance were made. Ega, meaning large, and liths, stone. The simplest megalith was the menhir, a large stone reverted vertically into the ground. Dolmens were also constructed, such as the ones we see in these images. The Metal Ages ended with the first written language about 4,000 years ago, and with this, prehistory comes to an end, but history commences. Did you find learning about prehistory interesting? Paleolithic, Neolithic, and the Metal Ages? We definitely did.
Listen here. After the end of this prehistoric age, the history began. What they are saying, how the history began, when man started to understand about the language, a linguistic development began. So at that time prehistoric age ended and historical age began. So this is how they have divided a history of the world or history of the India into two parts, that is a prehistoric age and historic age. In the prehistoric age, if you want to understand, if you want to study, there is no language development, there is no book at all. Only the material which were used by the man, those are source of your study, like bones and the stones which were used by the man, metals which were used by the man. So these are the source of your study. This is how we can understand the history of India. Let's
By getting to know our past, we understand our present and make our future better. Goodbye, friends. See you next time, and don't forget to subscribe to Happy Learning TV.